Okay, and we're live.
Perfect. So amazing. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this high performance leadership series about building a digital first financial ecosystem. My name is Janneke Koenen. I'm a partner manager at Atlassian, and I'm joined here today by Shane and Derek. So welcome both. Perhaps Shane, you can shortly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Janneke. My name's Shane Gallen. I'm the Director of Enterprise Solutions at Accelerate. Over to you, Derek.
Thanks, Shane and Janneke. So my name's Derek Smith. I'm the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Aberdeen Group. And back to you, Janneke.
Yeah, well, great to have you here. So very excited. So in the next 45 minutes, we are gonna talk to you about your experience, your insights, and also your passion for building a digital first financial ecosystem. For everybody here, we have actually kind of segmented this session in 5 key themes. The first one is the need for product transformation, then followed by leadership and product operating model, modernizing workflows, data-driven success, and then building trust, which is of course also very important. Please use the LinkedIn comments function just to say hi. Let us know where you're listening from. Let us know if you have any questions. We will follow up on the questions after this session. So yeah, I think we are ready to go. So let us kick off. Derek, I'm very curious if you can share a bit of your professional journey with us. So what led you into financial services, and eventually into actually product and engineering leadership roles?
Great. Okay, yeah, of course. So I think at the start, I originally studied a degree in software engineering. Come the end of the degree, I wasn't sure which type of industry I wanted to work in. So I was keen on doing a graduate scheme at a large company that would give me access to trying out different roles and different experiences. With that, I was fortunate enough to get a graduate place at Deutsche Bank, so worked in their investment banks graduate scheme, which gave great kind of global opportunities to learn across a significant growing company at that time. And not just in technology, really give you focus and understanding across financial services, technology, product operations, really that early deep dive into the industry. And then moving on from there, sorry, Janneke.
Oh, no, sorry. I was listening. Yeah.
Yeah, and then moving on from there, just a kind of, I'll give you a short potted history through my career and then happy to take any questions on that. So I moved on after 3 years to Bank of Scotland, which then became Lloyds Bank in the UK, and worked there for 15 years in a variety of roles, predominantly in product, technology or strategy roles. I did have a few years in sales, which I would encourage lots of people to do because I think sales gives you direct interaction day to day with your end clients. So really useful and actually helped me move then back from technology into product. And I worked across different areas, looking at product and risk management of businesses' risks when they trade internationally in interest rates and currency, in commodities, so for things like airlines. And I led the product development of those areas as well to look at how do we scale those solutions, how do we identify using data and analytics when firms will start to trade internationally, both on their turnover, their segment, behavior in their account that they may not know those risks are growing, so that you can early digitally engage and tailor communication and personalization to build solutions that evolve as they grow as a business and those risks grow. I then moved across to Scottish Widows, which was also within Lloyds and focused on the wealth space. And there I headed up innovation, how we partner with fintechs, but also as an engineering director. And that was about 10 years ago. And it was really the pivot in my career, where as a group, we were looking at how do we adopt a product operating model across about 20,000 colleagues. And that was bringing together, and that's directly and indirectly far more, but how do we bring in product design and engineering as core capabilities together? How do we pivot from IT being a partner-led process to an internal key skill that you want close to your clients to understand and solve problems at scale? And then really my career from them has evolved from there into similar challenges, so trying to design and adopt product models in different companies. In Virgin Money, where I led engineering across retail, business and wealth from a banking perspective. At Morningstar, where I joined as a fintech was being acquired into Morningstar. So it's looking at a fintech to scale up to how you scale that in a way across a global company. And then to my recent role now, where I've taken over as the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Aberdeen, and I'm 6 months into that role. So lots of the examples today will be from either past of things I've done or things that we as a team are trying to embed and lead now.
Well, that sounds great. It really sounds indeed you rolled into this industry, but you were immediately also ahead of the game almost, right? Within the fintech, with using data, which is very hot always, but now with AI, you mentioned it yourself.
Yeah.
And then now in the new role, so what does it mean for you to be the Chief Product and Technology Officer for Aberdeen? What sparked your passion for driving those digital transformations?
Yeah, so I think whether it's one person or a tightly aligned group, when you're trying to transform the capabilities within a business, when you're trying to adopt a product model at scale, that alignment's critical. The alignment in the executive team, the alignment with the board, if you're a kind of public company, and the alignment with the teams who are leading the transformation. So that's where this role is a new role in Aberdeen, but that's part of that driving force to help bring alignment in how we transform and build out our key foundational skills in digital product development and data product development to support our clients. And we're a B2B business in the division I'm in, and we build products and services for financial advice firms in the UK. And the capabilities within that role, the CPTO function, are product design, engineering, data, and delivery. And that delivery side would be where we work with partners across a multitude of different partners to develop solutions together. So they're the main skills that we form within that function.
Great.
Eric, so, oh yeah, thanks, Janneke. Being in that role, and within Aberdeen, what are the main drivers behind the decisions to, modernize Aberdeen's digital engagements and experience?
Yeah. Great. Yeah, so I think the context I give is we've got obviously an investment and trading platform that financial advisors will use to place and monitor and enhance their investments for the end investor, so to support their end outcomes. And that platform is world class. It trades billions of transactions a year. 99.6% of those are STP. And we're really proud of that platform. It's really feature rich and competitive. What we've been looking to do in investing in our digital engagement and experience layers and our data layers are saying, where do we need to move quicker with clients? So in the core platform operates as feature rich, but where do we need to invest to get closer to clients and to be able to release and respond to clients quicker? And that's where we focus the transformation on. So where do we invest in digital skills? How do we adopt and design a product operating model that's right for Aberdeen to really focus on those key problems for our advice and advisor communities now? So that's access to advice, that's efficiency for advice firms, and helping them be profitable. And they're the key areas we focused in on the why of the transformation.
And so, when you're starting in that space, how did you define that initial vision? Set objectives for the transformation, and how do you communicate them to stakeholders?
Yeah, and I think as a leader, you're always trying to think of that. When you're setting a vision, I think you're thinking of the clarity of how does it align to the company strategy. So you don't want to design a product. I would start with a product strategy, as in what are the problems we're trying to solve, what's the vision, but that needs to be aligned. So what I did at the start, I worked with meeting our board members, with the executive committee team that I'm part of, to look and see what is the current company strategy. Now, luckily, I joined at the end of a year, so it's quite good in the cycle terms of planning and looking ahead to the year after. What are the key problems we've saw in the market? We've had platform upgrades we've been managing with clients, we've got challenges on, we've got key problem points that are in the industry, and I've looked at our strategy as a company, then set what's our vision and mission. So we want to make it to be the easiest platform and product providers for advisors to work with. We want to make advice easier for advisors. So start with that vision, then look at those key problem statements in the market and make sure they're ones that we can solve. So are we right to look at them? And then form the vision and strategy around that. So we want to, and put it into positive messages. So this comes to me. So there's obviously, my view, often people talk about customer problems, but I want to frame them in opportunities, because I think you want to talk about positive language and outcomes as you move to your outcome-based model. So we talked about that, of a vision that sets around empowering advisors. So we're a B2B company, and we need to think about those two, the channel that we help. So we help financial advice firms. We need to look at the key pain points they have to provide excellent advice and investor outcomes. So start with that, get an understanding of the company strategy, write your product strategy aligned to that, go both up and down in that. So look at levels, so validate that the customer problems you have are firmed in data, they are scale problems. So we are not a startup. We have 50% of the financial advisors in the UK have access to our platform. So it's a scale, but you always need to think about how you solving problems at scale. So form that of what are the pain points, what's the company strategy, write a vision that links to that, so that we are empowering advisors to thrive by transforming their experience through integration, exceptional service, and innovative solutions that drive efficiency, profitability, and that we're the trusted partner for their business. So that goes into the pain points, the outcomes we're trying to achieve, and the vision. And then in the next phases, you then start to break that down into how can you quantifiably change, create that into objectives and outcomes. And I know we'll get to that later in the discussion, but it's really that alignment up front. Does it align to the company strategy? Do we understand our customer pain points at scale to set the narrowing of the vision and the strategy that the teams can then be empowered to solve?
I really like that when you indeed mentioned, well, the clients are, of course, the center, or the partners you work with are the center of everything that you do. And alignment really sounds like a key word. And I can imagine leadership alignment is also very important. So can you share a bit how critical is actually leadership alignment in driving a transformation of this magnitude?
Yeah.
And then did you use any strategies to bring leaders on board?
Yeah, so I think 100% is critical. And I think that piece of where in different teams I've worked in the past, not having that leadership alignment has really broken that down. So there's things that I use and being really careful on my language. So not saying that it's a product-led operating model. Yeah. It's a product operating model that's at the forefront of how you transform the business, but it's one area within a business, right? So our sales teams are as important, our finance teams, our operations colleagues. So there's language you need to be careful on. And then when we're talking about alignment as a leadership team, talking to the value of a product model, you need to think through of how it helps different functions and bring it to life to them. So for instance, with finance, a product model, often people will worry from a project knowing I know a cost, I know resources, and that's clear. If you bring to life the piece of finance, not just thinking of budgeting, but how you run a business on an ongoing basis, now you have traceability on the investment you give, a product model makes that far more efficient. And if set up well, if you use your analytics well, then the value and the ROI in the team is far easier. Because if you have a distinct journey or product that they own, and you have specific outcome metrics, but also health metrics for that product or journey, that tie directly to a financial outcome, you can do that. So again, with the alignment, I think through with each of the functions from my peers and experts in those areas to bring to life why the product model will help us and help them in each of their areas as we try to service the customer overall.
Also, it's a completely new way of indeed approaching that product operating model. not being product led. You already tipped upon it a little bit, but can you walk us perhaps through how you actually introduced this new model and why it was why it's pivotal
Yeah. So,
for
and I
modern
think
financial service? I always struggle with that word, pivotal.
okay, no problem. I think for this of the why, explaining the why and embedding that, I think
Mhm.
you need to be careful on is not just looking at a framework or a book, right? So I read lots of John Cutler, Marty Kagan, Hope Guron, lots of leading product thinkers, which is amazing, but you've got to think of the context, right? So I want to be really careful that, well, I think the benefit I've got of this is the fourth time I've tried to embed and design a product model at scale. I think the first time you do it, you try and follow a method step by step. The challenge that will give you is if you don't understand the context of the customers and their perception of your product and your service today, the challenges of your market, the context of their colleagues now. So again, the colleagues in Aberdeen have been through multiple mergers and acquisitions. They've been through platform migrations and upgrades. So you need to think about that of the experience of your colleagues, their understanding of the industry. Is your team a way to hire from scratch 100,000 people, or are you trying to reinvigorate and engage colleagues that are now? And all of those things you need to think about. So the principles are useful, but how you relate the value of that, you need to have the context. So that's where using the frameworks like Transformed by Marty Kagan, really useful, but do the detail. You need to get to know, like in your first 9 days, understand the business, understand the client, understand the colleagues, competitor landscape, if it's a new industry to you, and then map that to that and talk to that in that story. So you're going to have a vision linked to the customer mission. You're going to know the key problems for your customer, and then the principles of the value of a product operating model, empowerment, alignment, autonomy, direct link to the outcomes over the outputs, but tie them all to the problems or opportunities that exist for that company in the context they have now and their future strategy. And the part of doing that is also it stops you from just being a single thinker on this method always works. You need to challenge yourself as well, get to know that context first and the market context, to then, as you form the strategy and the story around that, to tie those two together so that people look at the principles of a product model, but understand and value that you understand the context of that business and how the challenges they face, but also how they can succeed, and tie those as a single story. And I think they change from the company and the context that you're working in.
Yeah.
That I really like that, like connecting the dots between the principles, the outcomes, and the pain points. I can certainly see if you don't have that connection, the challenges that might arise. And you've touched on the context of your colleagues, different challenges in the markets, engagements, your competitors, and your client yourself. As you're as you're thinking about starting to establish those workflows in the product operating model, sounds like you've definitely faced a lot of challenges. What were some of the biggest challenges, and how do you or how have you prioritized what to fix first?
Yeah. So I think again, say for example, what we're doing with Aberdeen and how we're working with our clients to look at where we should focus. I think you always start with what's the data you can see straight away. Now, fortunately, we've got quite good workflow and engagement data, both from how our clients use our platform, but also when they engage with us for a service inquiry. So service inquiry can be really positive if it's at a moment of truth in the advice journey. It can also be a challenge if it's failure demand on a workflow that they don't understand how to use. So we started by saying, when you talk about that, how do you segment the teams? First, with that layer up, and we talk about where are those key challenges and opportunities. Use the data that you can get. Use things like 5 forces or how to play, where to win. There's good frameworks for that. I like both of them, so obviously. But to look and see what's the challenges your clients face, what's their perception of the service that you offer, where do they think you need to improve, but use that data at scale to say, does the perception match the reality and how people engage with your products? Then look at where that opportunity is for growth, for efficiency, and for scale. So that's where, from our side, being a business to business, so B2B operator, and because if you think of financial advisors, so those firms, they use a multitude of technologies. They use different platforms we talked about. They use different CRMs. They have different technologies used as part of giving advice. Could be risk profiling, fact finding, a number of things in that journey. So understand the journey and the jobs to be done of those firms, understand where you sit in the value chain, where is there challenges, and then as you form your strategy, try and look at where do you think you can have the biggest impact to make your to help your clients succeed in a B2B market at scale. So from our perspective, we've got a platform that trades very well, where we look at the pain points are advice firms. So going back to jobs done, how do they onboard our platform? How do they engage with servicing to understand it? It is a feature-rich but complex platform. And then what's the challenges that sit around their whole ecosystem? And it's really integration. So open banking has helped lots of data integration points in banking. I know it's obviously in the name. Open finance is not as regulated because it's a far wider and broader term. Now, the clients we build products and services for are at the heart of that problem. They face into that because they have multitudes of platforms. They deal with clients who could have been invested for 50 years plus or family linking past that. So they have lots of legacy platforms. They have a multitude, as I said, of these other products. So often they use providers from 6 to 10 different companies. So integration is one of the themes that came up again and again, whether that's dual keying, whether that's trying to get analytics as they're giving someone advice and seeing 2 different versions of it or more. So we leaned in on saying, we think as a B2B player, our highest priority as we build out those experience, engagement, and analytics layers is to solve those problems. How do we help you service your clients quicker? And you want quick efficiency and accuracy, so we lean in on that. The second theme is that integration piece. How do we lean in to invest in data connection, data aggregation that allows it to make it easier for the firms to operate in their whole ecosystem ahead of any other regulatory drive? And then the third one is, as you're trying to engage with us as a new client or we're winning more books, how do we lean into the transfer challenge, which is one of the biggest challenges in the market, but lean in on that data accuracy and ingestion? So there's lots of things you could do on product innovation. I would say think our product breadth is very strong. It's on how do we really engage in some of those key problem statements that allow firms to be more efficient, get better accuracy and analytics on the data they have across multiple accounts to really help them scale in the way that they want to build their business. So that's how we focus our strategy, and then start to segment teams underneath that around products and journeys that match to those outcomes.
Some really nice hints and tips and strategies to operate in that space and really prioritize what to go after first. And it sounds like you're really looking to bring that together with data to help inform those decisions. And so you're talking about, that the principle of tying, outcomes to pain points and principles. But when you're working in an organization, like, how do you help shift a large organization's mindset from delivering just outputs to achieving outcomes, and that's that measurable impact?
Yeah, so I think you're trying again, as I said, I think finance is a really good partner in this. So because they will have to look at planning processes, but they also help you run the business day to day on the value on your balance sheet. Right. So I think I try to get as close to finance as possible on that, to say often people have fear and executives have fear of losing control, false control, but control when they don't know a date of a delivery. So what I try to do is look and see over the last 2 years, what initiatives have they sponsored or tried to deliver? The ones that have delivered, how do they monitor them now? So I dig out business cases, I look at the value and the business case that was in, how they're monitoring that now. And invariably, in most cases, you don't get strong measurement on an ongoing basis if it's a project model. So I try to go back to look at use cases of that. And you may be wrong, right? I might be wrong in those instances, but typically you find that. So if it's onboarding, I'll ask, okay, and they've updated a journey, what's the STP? What are the key things that look at satisfaction? Is it STP rate? Is it time to complete onboarding? Is it satisfaction of that journey? Okay, and if you built that, how much did it cost? What's the ongoing cost now? And what's the value uplift that's brought? Has it accelerated the time to money for an advisor or an investor? Has it delivered a faster onboarding experience? Are we growing our clients through the funnel as they hit that stage? So I try to look at that to not just say, here's theory of why this will be better, but here's gaps in how you've monitored ongoing value delivery in the past. Here's how this would apply in the new model. Here's how we would monitor that, be that onboarding, servicing, a new product launch. And then equally, so that's one part, and try to do that as a level setting. Then as you're trying to evolve to this model, there'll be things you do greenfield where it's a new team. And that's relatively easier. You should be able to set these principles, the measurement from day one. But there'll equally be things that are in flight. So what I try to do is you may not be able to change exactly how they're delivered, but you can start to measure the outcomes now. So if you're launching a new product, what are the metrics that matter? Speak to your sales team, speak to your finance teams on what's your growth projection based on that product and why. So if you were launching a new pension product, what is your acquisition strategy behind that? And is it a halo effect of multiple products or a single growth story? So understand that and talk that through and say, we will implement that now. So it's not all just about an old and new world. You can start to phase in those outcomes into existing deliverables, because however they've been delivered, you want to optimize them going forward in the new model as well. So there's a couple of things I would do to do that.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And you also mentioned it a couple of times, but it's the customer's challenges, your key problem statements, building solutions, products, your products for that, and of course making sure you can, yeah, you're focused on delivering those outcomes, those metrics that you set. So
Yeah.
you touched upon it before as well. OKRs, very important for that as well. How do we actually set meaningful OKRs to ensure transformation like this actually stays on track and really delivers value?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to take one step above OKRs. So at the top level, I'm firm supporter of using a North Star metric. So set your strategy and the outcome you need to achieve. That will typically be agreed at a kind of a higher group level. And so we may, as an executive, sign up to a kind of financial and growth target with our company board. You then want to get down to say, okay, well, that might be a monetary target, it might be a client number target, but how do you drive it around a North Star that has a meaningful link to your mission and a value metric that delivers that, and a value metric that you can tie deliverables and ongoing client feedback and innovation link to. So that can be lots of different things. One of the ones we look at is a platform provider rating. So there's an independent analysis not from Aberdeen, from one of the industry commentators. There's a number who do this, so I won't call out which one at the moment. They're based in Edinburgh, called Landcat, so you can look them up. But yeah, so they do a value assessment across our competitive landscape in the UK and gives an independent view on your proposition, your service, your value for money. Now, one of the reasons we pick that rating is it's independent. So it's our North Star, it's what we're trying to really impact and increase, but it's also not something that you can game, right? Which is good, right? So that's what we pick as our kind of North Star, because that ties around our purpose of being the best partner for advice firms, of improving and focus on service, efficiency, and it's all tied into those metrics. Now, underneath that, you then look at journeys or products where you think you can look at an end-to-end journey or problem that the customer is trying to do in their day-to-day life, and we start to segment the teams by that. Now, typically, I like to have onboarding and servicing almost as the left and right of the teams and have a wraparound digital service experience layer. And then within that, start to break that down. It depends on the industry. So the way we look at it is digital and assisted servicing. So they look at either 0 or 1-touch service journeys, or moments of truth where you need a human, digital, and hybrid approach where it's a more complex offering. Now, the quantitative piece, what we did with that is start to look at and say, what are clients contacting us about? What's the journeys they are performing? And then we formed objectives around that to say, where's the pain points, where's the opportunities around those jobs to be done at the highest level? And then we looked at what's the highest impacting metric to support them. So for the 0 and 1-touch service, they are things that firms do, and the administrators within those firms, that their operations staff are doing every day, highest volume tasks. And if we can transform that, either that's a 0-touch service where they don't think it's a service journey, it could be in a dashboard, it could be a status page, that's just part of how they run their business.
Mm-hmm.
We can really transform that journey for that client. And we've put that into time, efficiency, and STP of those journeys, but time being the top one. So if we assume that it always has to be accurate and we reduce the time dramatically, we believe, we hypothesize that will have a causal impact on the North Star. And the honest view is you make these objectives around the client, which you can do quite well. The metric to use if you're doing it for the first time, it will always be test and learn, and it always will be anyway, but you need to look at those causal links. You need to make the best estimate based on the data you have, run that through experimentation and prototype, and then continually monitor that. So if you're hitting or exceeding your OKRs, is it having the impact you predict or not? And then tweak them on based on that. And then as you evolve, if you go and you're top in class in servicing, okay, well, have you dialed up enough in your innovation, and where are your other teams looking at that? So you would also then tie your products and journeys to make sure it's an end-to-end view around the key journeys to the client. Then on a quarterly basis, look at the outcomes and the things that the team are working on, the teams as a portfolio, to say, does it have the right mix across service, cost, and growth? And that's look at that portfolio, and depending on where you've set your targets across the company and the product strategy for the year or for the medium term, always have that look ahead view and look back view, at least on a quarterly basis, to say, right, are we on track? Do we have enough innovation focus versus service focuses, and continue to that look up and down the metrics and on the customer problems?
And with that, of course, comes a lot of data. You have to keep in mind to make the right decisions, right? Make sure you have the data-driven impact. You mentioned it yourself as well. I'm very curious if you maybe have an example of a data-driven decision you made, or you made with the team, of course, that significantly moved the needle for this project.
Yeah, so I think the key one is on the servicing side. So often, what I think with data, you need to get careful of getting lost in averages at a high level. So the reason I say that is when we were looking at the service experience and how do we optimize efficiency and accuracy for clients and servicing journeys, you can get an average call time. But if you think of that, could be someone phoning to say, I want to to change an address and I don't know how to do it, versus someone phoning you and saying, my partner's died and I need to sort out their investments and their estate. They would both, if you looked at an average, sit in an average call time. They're completely different journeys. So what I would say with data and analytics is you need to make sure you're going to a level that tells the story to help you prioritize, use it in your strategy, and understand it to the right level. Now, that's with that when we would go to what's the journey the client is starting on. So what's their top 5 request needs? Then we go to a sub-request needs that gives you far more granularity. It goes down to about 50 different data points. Then we look at the time of each, but break down that time and journey. And I am using this as an example of what's the time for identity. And so what's the pickup time? What's the time for identity and validation? What's the time to understand the query? What's the time for the call handler to search for the answer? What's the time for them to resolve it and do the wrap-up? And all of that, we use data through all those points to understand down to the granularity, then to break that down so we understand the problem. Then we've used that to say, okay, how do we set up our product teams around those segments? As well as that, we've been able to not just understand the customer problem up front and the frustration with those journeys, we've been able to break that down into the type of journey, the time, the call handler experience, the system experience, all through data, to then feed that into the value chain that sets you, say, at the start for your discovery process, to say what's your problem you're trying to solve, what's the data points as an input, who are the clients you should contact, because we know which firms will call in, which firms drop off digitally. So we've used that to design our teams. We've used it at the inception of our discovery process. We've used that data to set the OKRs for those teams. And then we use that as an embedded process going forward to continually validate those data points to say, are they tied to the outcome? Do they tie to the North Star? So you continue those 3 cycles of customer feedback loops throughout the development process.
And Derek, you mentioned, at the starts, working in sales and really advising people to get into sales because you're really close to the customer.
Yeah.
So you're taking this data-driven approach to create this impact. How do you gather and analyze and act on that customer feedback to help transform, or to guide your different transformation initiatives?
Yeah, so I think when I talk about kind of 3 cycles of client feedback, we would do things with client feedback groups. So there is value. So we'll do it in a multitude of ways. I'll talk through a few. So we do it in client groups where there's multitudes of clients. So you can actually have an open debate on challenges each of them see to try and see one way of seeing are they common or not. We then do it through a structured discovery process. So, and I'll call out kind of Teresa Torres's Continuous Discovery book as one of the key texts, but also training programs we use to go deep in research and discovery with clients. So one of the key things that 100% support is that product teams, so if you think of product teams having product professionals, design, engineering, and data professionals primarily, we want to bring them closer to the customer. The people who are designing and building solutions, we want them as close to the customer as possible. So that discovery approach we use is that where we identify problem statements or things to build or things to solve or issues with customers, we train all of our product teams on how you speak and understand customers. We talk to them, say, in every sprint, they work in 2-week blocks mainly, depending on the type of team. You need to be engaging with clients in every one of those sprints, whether that's through market research, prototyping, so heavily based on research-driven development. So how do you do wireframes, prototyping, and deeply with your clients and model office as you scale? So research groups for wide research, you want to deeply engage those product teams for how they understand and engage with clients, and not just a single client. So you need to be able to go to a problem to solve for a single user to validate coming back out to see, does that solve a problem at scale? So as I said, we're a large company to build solutions at scale for firms, and sometimes that's not an individual problem, it's how do you scale? So you do that things through wide research, individual iterative product design and development, and then through analytics and tagging in every digital journey, and if you can, call and any experience points for the customer. So we want to build out for everything we build, product and application analytics that bring to life how firms and clients use the product. And that can be watching them use it, it can be seeing how they pass through in data, but for all of that, really, then you can get those 3 data points that sometimes we don't know how we use products, and we don't know. We remember something that annoyed us, but that doesn't talk to the whole experience, doesn't bring to life how we found workarounds. So because our platform's 15 years plus in development, some of our clients have found ways to use the platform, but not how we designed it. If you can't bring that to life in data, you won't know that. And often the client can't explain it to you because they just use it day to day. So there's those 3 pieces: wide research, iterative product design and continual development with clients, and then real analytics in the journeys to bring to life and match those sources together to validate the highest order problems. And as we say, it's a cycle, so that helps you identify problems, helps you prioritize, helps you test and learn, and then helps you iteratively prove value and optimize features and capabilities in life.
You got me smiling there, Derek, around customers finding ways around how to use a product or an application. I can think of a few products that I use that I definitely do that, and you almost forget that you're doing that, and maybe the pain that you felt at the start, you're living with it, and it's kind of it's there. So I can really see how like having that really close relationship and those feedback loops with your customers can help but build real trust with the product and the transformation of the products and services that you're undertaking. But we've been in a heavily regulated industry. How do you balance that innovation with the need to maintain customer trust and compliance?
So I think I talk about blast zones, and I know that probably doesn't help when you're talking about how do you make people feel comfortable, but when you look at the products and services you offer, I think you need to be careful around where are you deeply innovating and how do you protect that. So that's what I mean. Often if you've got a monolithic platform and you're changing something, it can impact everything or it has the risk to do that. Whereas one of the benefits of a product model is as you design your teams, we talk about empowerment and autonomy a lot, but one of the benefits of that is if you can put a wrapper or container around the services that each team contains, then any release should have less of a risk of impacting more things. But it also allows you to then, where you're innovating, you can do it in ways that has less of an impact across the whole estate, right? So if you've got a container place, but also there's that piece around segmented teams, own a journey or a product, but then also then you can assess the capability of what you're optimizing, releasing, building to say, is it like a phase 1, 2, or 3? Does it affect one service? Does it affect one team? Does it affect a team-to-team relation? Does it hit a whole enterprise? And you can kind of turn on color schemes that will let you say where the highest risks are, right? So if you're hitting something that changes the process for trading millions of transactions overnight, you should have a higher bar of the testing, the quality, and a high-scale innovation would need a number of phases to get to that. That goes back to our point there around doing phased innovation. There's a number of reasons for doing that, but one of them helps you do that. It helps you do the phase of wireframes to see, does it solve the problem? Then in the more technical prototype, can we solve that problem at scale? Then in the piece on your kind of desirability, viability, can you build a business model to support that problem? Then as you phase it out, you can go to one friendly customer, you can use test data, you can go to 5% of your customer base as you build out, and you do all of those things. So the segmentation of services, the blast zone kind of containment, and then the iterative development to make sure you're testing, are you solving the problem? Are you solving it safely?
I could listen to lots more because I find it really interesting that customer focus. You said a couple of times the North Star, what you refer to, indeed how to align and connect everything so that making that experience so great, and that indeed making sure you get the right data in several ways to really bring to life how people work with it. Of course, something that we at Atlassian, of course, are also doing with our team, right? So definitely want to hear more, but I'm also looking at the time. So perhaps we should organize a follow-up or something. So let me, for me at least, the last question from my side is, what are some key takeaways? What are the biggest lessons you've learned when it comes to modernizing your systems and your platforms?
So I think the piece you mentioned earlier around the alignment of the leadership team, the writing, when I talk about stories, I mean the narrative that explains your strategy and create buy-in across all levels of the organization. So in the first 5 months, I've been to every function, either primary in the division I operate in and work in, or a function who supports us like legal, etc., and talk to every one of their teams on the strategy, the problems, why we think this is addressing the challenges. So that piece of how you build buy-in to your transformation, it's easy to build buy-in early, but if you don't do it early, then once you have challenges, it's far harder to get back on board. So definitely the alignment of the leadership team, the building the narrative that aligns the company strategy, The other piece, and this is definitely my view, not everyone's. So I think having a minimal layer of OKRs is critical. So there are different schools of thought on how you build out OKRs. Some people use them where you do them for every team and every layer of an organization. I think that hampers you in building a real critical focus on decision making and prioritization. So I try to minimize it to 3 levels in a company. So you've got your North Star, a top level of customer problems you're trying to solve that any team in any part of the division can understand. And then you can have an OKR that your team is trying to impact, but no more than that. And then it allows you to do decisioning between teams. And that's where a lady called Christian Vodka wrote a book on radical focus, which is one of the main ways to implement OKRs. And that's the one that I've really resonated with. And to tie into Atlassian, I've also built those radical focus OKR boards into our Jira boards. So as you've got the team, you've got the OKR house, you've got the North Star, and you've got that digital analytics thread from the company strategy through to the team up and down. I think they're the things for me. Keep clarity in the narrative and alignment with the leadership team. The narrative needs to resonate with more than product. It needs to resonate with your customers and every function in your business so that everyone's tied behind it. And then I would minimize the layers of OKRs to help you drive focus and prioritization. Again, once you get into a transformation or into a year, prioritization starts to become harder. So having that clarity up front helps you make those calls when the difficult times come.
That's really interesting. And I like the advice of radical focus. I've written it down.
Good.
I can have a look at that. So I don't know, Shane, if you have any last questions for Derek?
Just hearing everything that we've covered today, if you had to give one piece of advice to leaders just starting, on their digital transformation journey, what would it be?
Yeah, it's probably simple. It's probably an easy one. I would read the book Transformed by Marty Kagan. And the rationale is it's a really good overview of, he's one of the leading product thinkers globally, but it's a really good overview of not just what a product operating model is for an executive. So it's not just for a digital product builder. This talks to each function. So when I talk about sales, operations, finance, legal, it gives good examples of how this could feel negative for them and how you can tell the positive story. And that the piece for doing that is what I said at the start, was that helps you think about the context of your company, right? It's very easy as product and digital development people to think of what do I want to build. But if you don't have that narrative to explain the key challenges in your strategy overall as a company, you really struggle to influence people. So I would start with that first as a key book, but don't just use it as a book to read as a framework. As you go chapter by chapter, write down the context, problem statement, and strategy you're trying to develop and deliver, and the business area that you operate in, and use that book to build up your approach to how you design and lead that transformation.
Perfect.
Yeah, sounds good. More books to read. Also written down.
That's a great book, by the way. The Transformed book is Marty Kagan's got a great way of really relating to different people across the organization.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we've actually used one of the product coaches, Hope Guron, within the book that they recommend to help design our customer discovery process with our team. So yeah, I actually take some of the book into action as well.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, very nice. Well, I think that's all we've got time for actually today. So thank you so much, Derek, for sharing your story and also your passion. It really transpires from all the answers you're giving us, and it definitely inspired me. For everybody who's here, please connect with us, follow Derek to continue the conversation or learn more. Follow Atlassian Accelerate as well on LinkedIn. Definitely check the Accelerate LinkedIn event page for the next high performance leadership series. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, folks.
Screaming lyrics like they're soldiers.